So we started the meeting welcoming everybody and making sure that we continue to understand that being late on assignments or worrying about grades or worrying about scores is not a great way to learn. We've got to continue to work as a team to overcome that, to understand that feeling guilty about stuff or feeling bad about stuff or whatever is
Not
not
good.
the way problems are solved. And the biggest problem we're trying to solve is to find our place in the world and the development of our capacities and make sure that they lock up so that we build the best possible lives we can build. And that's the whole purpose of what we're doing here. So continue to work on every week, trying to get up and every day try to do something just a little bit different to continue to work on yourself. If you continue to have problems with procrastination or with using your time when you're supposed to be productive to do things that are not so productive, you are not alone. You are like in the 95th percentile of the human race. And all you have to do is just get up every day and just try to do a little bit more, a little bit different, and continue to work on that. It's also helpful to articulate what's going on and the problems you're having and share them either with each other or with me, because then we can normalize it. And again, the more we normalize problems and the way we normalize developing regimentation and discipline, the sooner we're going to probably get there. Okay? All right, so at the beginning of every class now for Unit 3, I'm going to do just a little bit of a humanities thing, where I talk a little bit about music in general, background of music and whatever. And the only reason is because it's a little bit more like telling stories about music and it tends to be a little bit more enjoyable. And then we'll go talk about notes and rhythms and whatever, which tends not to be as enjoyable. But it is also very necessary. So bottom line for learning to read music is I can tell you exactly how to read music in about 5 minutes because it's a matter of repeating, looking at pitches and identifying pitches, repeating rhythms and setting a metronome and trying to say the rhythms over time, and eventually getting to the point where you can do both of those fairly quickly. So you increase the speed and you can identify pitches quickly and you can identify rhythms quickly. Then it's a matter of locating where the pitches are, particularly on the keyboard. If you're thinking you want to go into music, almost everybody should be familiar with the keyboard. Keyboard is kind of our universal instrument. In other words, if you're a guitarist or ukuleleist or a harmonicist, I don't think that's right. Harmonicaist? I don't know. A harmonica player. Whatever it is you do, just understand it's really helpful to be able to understand kind of what we call concert pitches. And concert pitches are the keyboard. That is what you see and what you play is the same thing. It's not for guitar and bass as an example. Guitar reads music one octave higher, bass reads music one octave higher. That's so that we can put everything for guitar and bass in one clef. And most every other instrument kind of demands on us having some kind of an understanding of keyboard. So that's the instrument of choice for this class. If you don't have access to a keyboard, we'll accept, if you're in track one, we'll accept your reading of music coming up in about 3 weeks. We'll accept that on any instrument, but we'd recommend keyboard. If you're in tracks 2 and 3, we demand that you use keyboard, unless there's just absolutely no way to do it. And there is, by the way, even to do it using MuseScore. It's a virtual keyboard and it kind of like sucks, but it's still better than nothing. Okay. All right. So remember at the beginning of class we talked about flamenco music. Do you remember I played that for you once? Let's just kind of go to our handy dandy screen thing. And so why would somebody want to know, somebody who's into rock or whatever, why would somebody want to know about this? So what do you think?
Cool. Pretty rhythmically complex.
It's rhythmically complex, and it's rhythmically complex because of the improvisational nature and the multimeters, because it's all designed to flow with the improvisation of the person who's reciting and the dancer who is dancing. And so they will change meters and do things. They will add verses. They will completely change the flow because it's entirely improvisational. It's basically blues. It is also the style of music from which the guitar evolved. So this is like the first style of music where what we call the Spanish guitar, aka the guitar, came into existence. They flattened the back of the oud, which evolved from North Africa and became the guitar, the vihuela, and then the guitar. And then through colonization of the Spanish into all other cultures, it became the guitar here. And then we put a pickup on it and we flattened it down and did all the things we do to the guitars you guys play. But this is important. Like this is the style of music that is not only behind all guitar music, but it's behind all Latino music or Latinx music as well. All right, so that'd be important. Okay, what about this music? What is this?
What?
So what kind of music theory person tell me about it? What's interesting about it? Where's it from? What does it have? What's its significance? Okay, and this is what we're
Couldn't hear.
when you start to become a musician, you stop listening from, oh, this is my stuff. I mean, you can do that, by the way, if you're doing music as a hobby or just for you, it's just for a garage band or whatever. But if you're thinking you want to do music with other people or you want to expand your vocabulary, you want to look at every type of music as having some kind of lesson there. There's something you can get from it, okay? Again, think of the chef. The chef does not distinguish just because of the food he eats or she eats. They distinguish of all the food because they want to cook for others. Okay, that's their profession. All right. Aurora, what were you going to say?
Bro,
It's what?
rock music.
Okay, good. Anybody else? All right, so first off, we might call it classical music. All right, that's a kind of a generic thing. That's like saying, Western Hemisphere or something. If I say, where are you from? You say you're from the Western Hemisphere. I'd say, can you narrow that down just a bit? Well, classical music is kind of like that. It's a broad scope. Can anybody narrow it down a bit?
Professor Naylor, somebody couldn't hear the music.
You couldn't hear the music?
Yeah, Dana couldn't hear it.
Huh.
Are you on the screen where it says all this stuff with like the humanities moment?
Yeah. Share computer sound. Everybody could not hear it?
Is there a chat?
Just
I was fine. I could hear it.
You can hear it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I could hear
I
it.
got nothing. It says I'm sharing the sound of the computer. Let's try it again. See if maybe it was just, I don't know, something. All right, can you hear it? Yes, no?
No.
No? All right, let's try something else here. Maybe it's my iTunes. No, my iTunes is up. All right, let's stop sharing and then we'll start again. Yeah, so according to my thing, everything is clicked. Share computer sound. What else could be wrong? Oh, maybe let me check up here. Yep. No. All right, try it again.
Okay, click that. Enter.
Yes, we can hear it.
That's like part of Ode's joy, right?
Yeah. It almost sounds like a very.
Okay, so what about it? And you guys can take guesses. Remember, we don't care about being right. We just want you to think about what's behind it. Okay, so anybody?
It sounds
Yeah.
more like 17th century, Bach, and it sounds like it's almost like a hymn.
Good, excellent. So yes, it is. So it's 17th century. Of course, you know, you can see the Bach up here. So if you know when Bach is from, you want to kind of pin it down. It sounds like a hymn. That's because in the Protestant church, they broke away from the Catholic church and they allowed instruments into the church, which is kind of the beginning of the explosion of orchestration. So when we talk about the orchestra, this is kind of where the orchestra is developing, even though it originally came from the Middle East. The orchestra evolved from the Middle East, and then kind of it was out in the streets and became street music, and then eventually we led it into the church. Well, when Protestantism broke away from Catholicism did not allow instruments in. They just wanted the human voice. The Protestant church let it in, and so this is kind of where things are really allowing us to go ahead and develop the orchestra, the same orchestra we use in video games and film music, okay? And yeah, this is called a fugue, but it's also the basis for the hymns that became the Protestant hymns here in the United States. When the colonizers came across, they brought this style of singing, and most of the hymns that we have in American or European Protestantism evolved out of these Bach cantatas. And these Bach cantatas, or cantatas basically, were like a 50-minute mini opera, religious opera. All right, now the biggest thing about this is called counterpoint, fugue. So from the perspective of the theory, whenever I write multiple melodies, like when I'm harmonizing and I want a lead guitar and I want a bass, I want the melodies to go in counter motion. I want them to be complementary to each other. And so Bach is kind of the designer of what we call counterpoint, which is multiple melodies going against each other. Okay, so when you design and you orchestrate music, you want to be able to use effective counterpoint. You don't want things to move in parallel motion so that they just sound like they're moving like this. You want them to move in contrary motion, okay, so that there is a little bit more of a feeling of motion and movement. And that's basically what these fugues embodied, okay? Now, from the perspective of history, it's important. From the perspective of composition, it's important, and it doesn't just relate to Bach or classical music. It relates to everything. If I'm doing an R&B song and I want to go ahead and I want to write for Beyonce and some other singer to sing harmony, I'm going to use the principles of counterpoint. Okay. All right. What about this? What is this music about, and what's its significance? Jump ahead. Anybody? Significance, style of music, artist, give me anything.
Pretty recent.
Oh,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll call on people. So who was talking? I don't even know. Let me get the screen up here. Okay, go ahead. Try it. Anybody who wants to. Go ahead.
I thought it sounded like I heard a little bit of improvisation.
Okay, improvisation, absolutely. Yeah, so this music is about improvisation. Can somebody define improvisation? What is it? And again, so all right, bring your child back in the room. Y'all like, well, I don't know the exact definition of improvisation. Guys, just come on. Let's what do you think it is? Okay.
It's kind of like making it up on the spot. Yeah.
Making it up on the spot.
What
Good.
we've already learned.
Clayton, what were you going to say?
I was going to say it's composing on the spot, but
Composing on the spot. Good. Who else?
Using what we've learned to rearrange in our own head and then create what we want out of it.
Ooh, that's perfect. Okay, so we make it up on the spot, but we make it up based on what we know. So I want to be really clear. So you're not really making it up. You're making it up with the vocabulary you have, which is why we got to learn more vocabulary, because the more vocabulary you have, the more expansive your composition and your improvisation is. And here's something you didn't know maybe or didn't think of, but that previous Bach piece was originally an improvisation. In fact, every composition that has ever been made started out as an improvisation. So the pathway between composition and improvisation is we improvise something first, then we refine it, and then it becomes a composition or a song. And so your ability to improvise is absolutely essential to your ability to compose. All right, so kind of jazz is kind of like ground zero for being able to do it. Now, if you have in your mind that this was like background music or whatever, you have to recontextualize things. All right, that means you got a tainted file. You know, if the only time you heard this music was in Starbucks, it becomes Starbucks music. You know, it's like that's background music. You know, and the thing is this is entirely not background music. It's an entirely a person standing up with a horn. They play through a tune, then they use the form of the tune as the basis for spontaneous composition. Okay, and so they're literally composing on the spot, and your job as a listener is to ride that composition for a period of time. All right, this was Miles Davis, FYI. All right, now we're going to come to, and another thing about jazz that's pretty critical is jazz is the basis for the evolution of the rhythm section, which is what put the beat in Western music. So if you like rock and you like country and you like R&B and you like hip hop and you like all this stuff and you're talking about the beat, which is like important, we know we're really talking about the rhythm, and we're talking about the rhythm made by the rhythm section, which evolved out of New Orleans, which was a Creole culture, basically a mixture of a bunch of people, Native American, African American, Afro-Caribbean, French, Arcadian French, who came down from Canada. They basically got exiled too, so it's a bunch of exiles living there. And it was like the last state to become colonized by the United States. And so what we call Creole culture is literally created culture. And they created a style of music using all the instruments that were just kind of left down in the South at the end of the Civil War, which became the rhythm section, including the drum set or the trap set is what it was called, a contraption, which became the basis for all the forms of music that we used, including electronic music. It models, when we make electronic music, we still use bass and drums as the kind of the basis for what we do. All right, so all this evolved out of jazz. Now, why would you have to know that? Because that's how you get roots. And that's how you learn to listen differently. You don't listen selectively just based on the music you're into. You start doing that, then keep music as a hobby, you know, or keep music as just kind of a joy. And it's perfectly okay to do that, by the way. But if you're going to go into music and you want to be a musician, you want to learn about these histories. Okay, the last one I'm going to get to is blues. And so, what is this about?
Well, now getting late over in the evening, I feel like blowing my horn. When I woke up this morning, all I had was gone. Now getting late over in the evening, man. Now I feel like blowing my horn. Well, now woke up this morning. All I had was gone.
Anybody? What is it? What is it? What's it about? What's he talking about? What style of
Talking about the
music?
blues, what he's been going through.
Yeah, it's blues. All right. And blues is about what?
The sad things or the bad things he's been going through.
No, it's actually about truth. Now,
Oh, okay.
yeah, you're right. If you're African American living in America all the way up to, oh, I don't know now,
Right.
a good portion of the time, what you're going through is based on our history, and our history dehumanized our African culture and here in the United States. And so very often it was sad, but it was about truth. And so, blues can be about spirituality. It could be, there's lots of, Jesus blues, and there's, the blood of Christ blues. And then there's blues about, relationships and this and that and whatever. But this particular blues is actually, his baby is his songs, because race labels basically recorded African American musicians and then had white people basically re-record them. And so you lost your rights. So you might get paid $2.50 for a piece of music. You'd do the recording, and the next thing you'd hear your song being done by a white musician on the radio. And so he was talking about his baby was his songs, and he feels like going home. What's a home going for African American culture? Home going. Go ahead, Joan.
I have no idea.
I thought you clicked on your mute. So yeah, it's a funeral. So home is like, look at, you took the only thing I have. You only left the door of entertainment open to me, by the way. Sports and entertainment all the way, arguably, until the 70s or 80s. There were very few lawyers or doctors or surgeons, not because African Americans couldn't be, but because the doors were not open. And so if you go into an area and then you build something and everybody likes it, whatever, and the next thing you know, you hear somebody else doing it and you get nothing for it, and that was the only door that was open, that's messed up. So just FYI, that transfers all the way up into your generation. You recall maybe even Vanilla Ice, as an example, was a white rapper that started to make claims about his life and about what he was doing that were not actually true. And African American people are used to having their music and their ideas basically stolen from them, and misrepresented. And so this is a very, very long history. Okay. Now, why does blues factor into everything? Because all of our popular music, country music, everything uses blues. You can't find a country song that doesn't have blues or gospel music.
Papa drove a truck nearly all his life. You know it drove Mama crazy being a trucker's wife. The part she couldn't handle was
Okay, somebody
being
can't hear me?
alone. I guess she needed more to hold than just a telephone. Papa called Mama each and
We can
every
hear you.
night. Just
Okay, all right. So I don't know what's going on out there in cyberland, so I'm trying to look at your faces and try to keep up. So you might just break in if you're having a problem, because by the time I get to the chat room, like half the class is gone. So, all right. So that was blues too, by the way. That was based on the blues. And so basically rock, country music, R&B, gospel music, everything. The first gospel musicians that we kind of call gospel music were Tommy Dorsey and Mahalia Jackson. They were blues artists first. So blues is like the basis for telling the truth, and that is factored into all of American music. It's also the basis for punk music. It's basis for just about everything. The ability to say what's on your mind and make sure it's truthful. That basically has impacted all of our music. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just to show you a little bit about this. Let's go ahead and just play a little video here, and then we're going to move on into the theory lesson for today. You guys hear and see that? From the field hollers, early rural blues, to Delta blues artists like Robert Johnson and B.B. King, to Texas blues artists such as Blind Lemon Jefferson and Sam Hopkins, or later blues artists who moved north such as Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Bo Diddley, Magic Sam, and Buddy Guy, blues is the centerpiece of much of today's popular music, as acknowledged by musicians such as the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, and the Beatles. The simple structure of the blues gives musicians plenty of time to think about what they want to say, to reach deep into their soul, and to spin a story that both clears their conscience and is a spontaneous expression of emotion or exchange between the musicians. we can say without hesitation that both the musical elements and the human value of the blues, which as B.B. King says, is an expression of the truth of the moment, has directly or indirectly affected every popular style of music on the planet.
Well, I cried, babe. Well, I cried all night long. Well, I cried, babe. Well, I cried all night long.
So this is actually what we call rock and roll, but rock and roll first evolved in the church with the clapping on beats 2 and 4 on black churches, and then was basically attached to the rhythm that you hear here with the rhythm section. And so this is kind of the basis for what we call rock and roll. And then obviously it evolved from there to all the forms of rock that we have, from, you know, hard rock to heavy metal to soft rock to whatever. Okay, I'm just going to play a little bit more of this. So it's called Zydeco, and Zydeco is one of the styles of music that grew out of this Creole culture that eventually then kind of incited the growth of country music. It merged with Celtic music, and Celtic music is basically comes from Ireland and Scotland. And so the merging of those styles eventually gave birth to what we call country music. It also is deeply... Okay, I'm just going to move ahead a little bit. Rock and roll, jazz, country music, and the blues. The blues represents a mixture of cultural influences dating back to the spontaneous musical stories of the West African griot or jelly, to the individual laments or stories of slavery, the songs of sharecroppers, or of those who were blind and used blues as an expression of hope. From rural blues to the classic chords and melodies of Delta blues, to urbanized rhythm and blues blending the beats and added instruments from jazz with the rhythm of urban life, we cannot omit a couple of very important points if we wish to honor this magnificent expression of truth and honesty we call the blues. First, though many popular or modern forms of music have benefited from the blues, and though everyone has their own story or truth and the right to express it, the blues originated in the African American community and was largely born from the hardships, trials, and need to heal from the gross inhumanity of slavery and racism. This must not be underemphasized, or we trivialize the sacrifices of our blues musicians. Second, many of the non-African American musicians, from Elvis Presley to rock and country musicians of today, who built their careers largely from the influence of the blues, neither honored nor paid respect to the artist who paved their way. This is called misappropriation. To understand and reverse injustices of the past demands acknowledgement and continued education and dialogue. And third, in understanding a musical expression or genre that has grown out of a history that is as tumultuous and painful as that of Africa America, there are numerous truths that must be considered simultaneously. Among these, first, that neither guilt or denial help us learn or change. Second, But not being a part of a generation or past does not exempt us from learning history. Youth of every generation must exert energy to their past, however painful, if they wish to mature and grow. And third, that the beauty, energy, and entertainment value of music is not rooted in the ease and comfort of how we might use it, but in the pain, sacrifice, and struggles of the past. So with this in mind, let's go. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing, and this is the end of our little humanities section. So let's go ahead and get some feedback. Any thoughts?
In the one song, this has nothing to do with humanities, but in the one song in the blues video, he was playing his shirt. What is, or like,
Yeah, so that's a
what is that?
scrapeboard or scrapboard, so washboard they call it. And so yeah, that was, I mean, in Creole cultures, the thing about in African cultures, all African diaspora cultures everywhere, you'll go into, like I went into a little village in the Congo one time, and people had this drum ensemble, and they were using tomato cans, you know, like different size like cans, and you know, you make do with what you have, you use whatever you have, and anything can be an instrument that creates vibration. Well, this particular washboard became the basis for an instrument. They used spoons, they used all kinds of things. And it's just this ingenious creativity of a culture that had so little, but they took whatever they had and they made it into something that was just, I mean, absolutely remarkable, you know. And the thing is, so, you know, what you guys have to understand is if you play the music, but you don't know its history, you're not really playing the music. You gotta know the history. You have to honor the people of that history, and particularly in our case, because of the history of racism and the undermining of people that gave us so much, but then it was just perfectly okay to kind of take it and use it. You know, Elvis Presley, his music is wonderful because he hung out with black people and he hung out in black churches and this and that. But he became known as the king of rock and roll, which to African American culture is pretty disrespectful because rock and roll happened like 30 or 40 years before he was even born, and it was being used as a term like rock and roll with the spirit was in the church. That was the term that rock and roll was coined, and the backbeats are 2 and 4, 1, 2. That's rock and roll. So it was, you know, how can the king of rock and roll become a king of something that existed, you know, decades earlier and was being done in the black church? Well, that was just simply because if you're white in the United States, you could pretty much take ownership of anything you want. And African Americans had no right basically to you know, to their own, even their own music. And you have to know this history because when you play the music, people can tell if you know it. You know, this is what's missing. And so I just need you to know for all the music, okay, the more you understand the history. Now, if you found any of this painful, by the way, you can take my class, which is a little bit more gentle. You know, the music appreciation, we kind of lead you through the ideas of implicit bias and things like this and kind of get you there. If you're hearing some of this stuff for the first time, I'm really sorry. You should have been learning this stuff in K through 12. There would not be a problem with racism and there would not be a problem with racial division in our country if people learned actual history instead of his story, which is, you know, people making stuff up. But if you do feel a little bit of friction, don't feel bad. That's the friction that's just caused by the fact that just people didn't give you the right narratives. And for musicians especially, our music, so much of our music grew out of our African American cultures, and it was based out of their pain and out of their hardship that the music evolved. So you have to learn that. Sadi. All right, so that was my little humanities thing. And by the way, the same thing goes with the Bach cantata and things like this. I understand Bach suffered too. You know, he had like 3 jobs, 21 kids, and you know, and everybody said, you know, this Protestant stuff is like, that's not Catholic. And you're right, it's not, it's Protestant. So just to be clear, most of music, like the best of the best, came out of suffering in some way. A lot of the country music evolved out of the reels and the jigs that evolved from our Celtic cultures, from Ireland and Scotland and Wales, and they were repressed for 800 years by the British. So, you know, and then, oh yeah, that potato famine, that wasn't a very nice thing either. That would there are more Irish living in the United States than living in Ireland. So just FYI. All right, so enough of that. That's our little humanities segue. That was a little bit longer than I intended by about 8 minutes. So anybody have any thoughts or comments? And it's good to give thoughts or comments, including like, I didn't know, or yeah, Jasmine, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna say I didn't know. Just that, like, blues had so much of a connection to all these other like different categories of music that you hear about all the time. Like country, like you wouldn't think that it goes with blues. I mean, I could see gospel and R&B, but it was just like when you explained how it all kind of mixed up into being what we know now. It's just very interesting.
Yeah, so one of the diseases we have in the United States, the disease of racism, which is the ism of race, seeing races. As you know, they're a construct. We made this stuff up, okay? Human race is a single race. But because of our history, and because of this construct being embedded in, we look at like white music and white people and black people. We just got this complete division. I will go so far as to say if you can find one single country piece, including bluegrass, anything, that is not completely filled with elements of blues, jazz, or gospel music, I will give you an automatic A and pay you $100. But I know you can't. Even the banjo is a West African instrument. So that's the distance between us having an accurate version of history and the history that we have as the result of the ism of race. Okay, and so yeah, so it takes a little bit of effort to rethink this, because I know I'll be perfectly honest with you. I went in, all right. So now I don't know if I'm ever going to get to reading music, but I went to Dakar, Senegal, my first tour of Africa with a jazz group. We arrived at midnight. I'm in Africa, the motherland, and you know we're walking across the tarmac, and I'm thinking, oh, there's going to be African drums, and I'm thinking, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, yeah, I get my groove on. It's gonna be drums. I walk into the airport, and the first song I hear is "Kiss an Angel Good Morning, Love Her Like a Devil When You Get Back Home." And I'm like, what the, you know, do you guys ever see that Tim Burton movie Mars Attack? Oh, there's the heads just explode when they hear the music. Okay, that's how mine was, because in my world, country music and Africa did not go together. And then I found out country music was enormously popular, and still is, throughout much of Africa. Why? Because
Truth telling.
Go ahead, Javon.
Well, I said the truth telling, the blues.
Yeah, well, country music is about telling, it's the blues translated into kind of European culture, but they also were colonized by Europe, and they've also been doing the blues for thousands of years, basically telling the truth of the moment. So why not tell the truth it's about stories about life. Okay, that's what country music does. It's kind of the blues about life stories. And so they don't have our experience with racism. They have their own, but it's different. People were colonized in their country, so still the majority of people are African, and so they're able to look at the music just as music. They don't see the whiteness or the blackness. Okay, all right. So anyway, yeah, get your heads up. Learn about history. Learn about what's behind it. The more you learn, the more you have, the deeper your roots go. Musicians can tell when people know this. Like when you play the blues and you're just playing the tones. We can hear that when you play the music and you're playing the soul, and you have respect for the people upon whose lives blues was built. We can hear that too. All right, just know this with everything. Okay, all right. So let's talk about notes. Woohoo! So let's move on back to this, and then we go
north to Chicago.
Okay.
Go in Detroit.
Where do I get out? There we go. All right, so just a reminder, I put this slide up last time. Back work anyone can do. A sonograph, you can work with other people, and you can continue to do this. So you can post sonographs, in the discussion boards for modules 3, 4, and 5. Some of you did sonographs and really followed the form. If you didn't follow the form, I still gave you credit. Or if you made pieces based on kind of your own impressions and whatever, you'll want to at some point, if you're in tracks 2 and 3, you'll want to take maybe a more complex piece, but actually follow the sonograph exactly. Get the format and the layer exactly. Learn how to be able to build a piece on somebody else's format, because that's how you increase your vocabulary, which means you have more to improvise with. Okay, so remember, if you use your vocabulary and only your vocabulary stays the same. But if you hang out with other people and you try to learn what they have and you start to kind of create that dynamic, your vocabulary is going to increase, which means you have more to work with. Okay, and that's how you learn vocabulary. All right, continue to show up for class, take notes, ask questions before, during, and after class. I'd like more people to hang around after class if you can, especially if you're struggling or you need some assistance or you just need some motivation or you just want to chat. The more unfamiliar you are with, I can't even read my notes because it's blocked here, with the vocabulary, the more reading the PDF slowly and watching the videos will happen. Just as an example, some of you, when you did the procrastination, you wrote about procrastination, but you had no clue what procrastination was because you didn't watch the video. And so it's kind of hard to fix something you don't completely understand. Those of you that did watch the videos had a little bit more input, because now you not only had an idea of what causes procrastination, but you also had an idea of what to do with it. So just understand, we totally understand you guys got, multiple classes and you have work and you have, you're in a global pandemic. Oh yeah, then there's that. And so we totally understand that all this is on your plate, but this is the goal, all right? Do assignments by due dates, but if it's not due, if you don't get it done by the due date, just do the assignment, all right? You have a week after the assignments are due where I will grade them without any chastising or anything. I still won't chastise you even later, but I might take a point or two off if I start to see a pattern, because at some point you just have to continue to try to make a different effort. And definitely don't not do the assignments, because not doing the assignments basically means we're not trying to work over procrastination. It's not about the grades, it's just about getting up and trying, okay? Practicing, if you haven't built a practice regimen, that's the thing you want to continue to work on. You want to do this with all the things that matter to you. So if you're going into film, or you're going into science, or you're going into engineering, or whatever it is that you think is kind of your path, it's like what you were put on this earth to do, make sure that gets into a regimen of some sort over and above the classes, and that you practice whatever vocabulary. So as we move on, I'm going to continue to talk about a regimen. If you're not a musician, or music is just kind of a hobby, the regimen doesn't have to be music. But you definitely want to practice whatever it is you want to get good at, okay? And just understand, this is no easy thing. If it was easy, I wouldn't be talking about it every week, okay? All right, if this was easy, we would not be teaching it, all right? I would, why would I teach stuff you already know, okay? All right, now, reading music to me is the penultimate example of boring things that have to be done in a very strict, regimented way. And if you do them, you will be reading music in no time. So the first thing is it's good to have a motivation for about what we're to get into. And again, the higher the motivation, the better chance it's going to happen. So can anybody give me a motivation for reading music? Or reading music better if you already read it. So if I read, as an example, Jasmine, we talked about reading the treble clef. Why would I want to learn to read the bass clef? So anybody give me a motivation?
Being able to play a piece somebody
Yeah,
else made, practice.
Yeah, okay, good. Being able to play a piece that someone else created without having to hear it, without having to transcribe it yourself or fuddle it through, by listening. Okay, I mean, ear training is very important. Don't get me wrong. Okay, it's not one or the other. But if Juan hands me a piece and I can look at it and in 20 seconds or 3 minutes or whatever, I can psych it out and break it down, and he can count to 4 and we play. That saves a lot of time. That immediately allows us to do a lot more in a lot less time. Okay. And of course, the reverse is I can come up with ideas, I can get them down, and Joanna and I can go and play that song a year later. Okay. And it's like it's there. Okay. So that would be one reason. Now, if that resonates with you, that might be your motivation. If that doesn't resonate with you, let's come up with another one. What's another motivation? Don't make me do my ugly face.
I was the bass clef compliments like treble clef, so maybe to give it.
Can you lean in just a bit, Jasmine? We're not picking you up.
Oh, sorry. I was saying I think that the bass clef like complements the treble clef.
Yeah.
So just like giving it that extra like I don't know.
Yeah, so both clefs are necessary for musicians, even though the treble clef is generally the one we use for melody. Okay, we'll write melody in treble clef even if a bass or a tenor sings it. But the bass clef is the one that does what? What does it do for a living? Why do we need it to write a song?
It has the bass line.
It has the bass line, and the bass line is the foundation of the chords and the harmony. And the thing is since I can only sing with my voice and my body, I have a hard time like creating chords. If I can come up with cool bass lines and I know the key, I automatically know what the chords are even without an instrument. So when your theory gets a little bit better and you can come up with cool bass lines, you can compose just with you. Like when I can sing bass lines, boom. Now come over here, boom. I can immediately find my key, and now boom, I'm done. Okay, I know I can tell you what chord or note of that scale each of that bass notes is, and what chord that would be, which we're going to learn in units 4 and 5. It's all up here. It's all there. Boom. So yeah, so bass is important, and the whole scope. So again, y'all need a motivation, and this is for every class, by the way. Okay, the motivation is like, well, why do I need this math? And if I don't need the math for engineering or something that is math-based, then I have to say, okay, so what's the next thing? So what might be the motivation for learning to read music if I'm going to be a nurse, or if I'm going to be an accountant, or I'm going to be something, and I don't really care if I read music? Because like more than half of you at the beginning poll said you didn't really care if you read music. So now what? We're going to do this for like 3 weeks. You understand? It's like it's not, you got to. It's like this is what allows the theory class to transfer, but it's also kind of ground zero for theory. So Ben, go ahead.
It trains your brain to like think faster because you have to process and determine the notes, even though it's not like written A. You have to determine what it is.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, neurologists are now studying music creation and music reading and music performance, and the kind of the classical approach to being able to recognize pitches and recognize rhythms. I mean, even blues or jazz, pitches and rhythms, any notation, okay? And then be able to go ahead and in real time with a metronome and with a beat, be able to process that information, get it into our hands, and be able to play it in real time is the complete exercise of the entire brain. It exercises emotion, it exercises the kinesthetic, the actual movement, muscle memory and things like this. And then of course we have all the processing of sound, we have the visual processing, all of this. It's just like major brain activity massage. It's like maturing your brain. And so from there, we can basically take what we call plasticity, brain plasticity. Increased brain plasticity increases memory, it increases brain functionality, it increases brain functionality as we age, and it increases our ability to multitask and be able to do so efficiently. because in a sense we're firing these neurons in all these different directions. So if you have an interest just in kind of like helping your brain develop and maybe become a little bit less scattered and a bit more concentrated, this is the quintessential way to do it. All right, now that's about it for motivation. I don't have any other ones I can think of, but I can tell you there's nothing inherently difficult about learning to read music. The only thing that's difficult is about getting a regimen where you actually practice correctly, and that's what I'm going to get into now. Yay, reading music, it's good for you. Woo. All right, so this is the beginning. So we basically have pitches that are on the staff and then above and below the staff. Ledger lines are what we call the ledger. Actually, I should back this up. I think I have a better one to go through. Let me get out of here and let me open up another one. I should have paid a little bit closer attention. So hang on. All right, so we're gonna go through stages, and again, I'm going to try to like reiterate these stages are really important, because if you do them correctly, you'll be reading music in no time. If you just kind of do what's comfortable to you or what you already know, then it takes a lot more time to learn to read music. So this is, again, if you have a regimen and you've set aside a regimen, you're starting to use it, this is what we'd want you to put in your regimen. So first of all, we'd want you to put in note recognition. We start in the note recognition doing our assignments first, and then creating a practice sheet using the musescore.org. We can create a free account. Okay, so if you haven't downloaded and created a musescore.org account, please do so, because it's free notation software, and I'll show you how to use that, not this week, but probably next week. Then what we want to do is we want to start by identifying pitches in the treble clef. First, the ones that are on the staff, the notes that are on the staff. So you might practice that and do that for a whole week, or a few days or something like this. And then you work on the ledger lines above and below. I'm going to encourage you guys to do the E below middle C in the treble clef, which is the low E of the guitar. Okay, the low E string of the guitar, written an octave higher, to the E above the treble clef, which is the third ledger line above the treble clef. If you can read in that range on the treble clef, you can pretty much cover almost everything that we do. All right. Bass clef then next. Oh, and by the way, first of all, I'll do notes on the staff, then I'll do the ledger lines above and below, and then I'll mix them. Okay, and then I'll try to locate them on the keyboard. And if you're in track 1, you could just do it on guitar if you want to do it. Okay. So that's how I would do it. I would drill treble clef until I have treble clef, and basically then I can set a metronome, and I can do the treble clef with all the mixed notes, having done first on the staff and then the ledger lines and then the mixed. I can do it at a quarter note equals 120. That would be the goal for a musician, is to be able to get up to the point where you can do relatively quickly and you can identify the notes. G, F sharp, A, B, da, da. And we do the same thing on the bass clef. Find the ones on the staff, drill the ones on the staff, then drill the ledger lines above the staff and then below the staff, and then mix them up. And again, I'll encourage each of you to make your own study sheet, because in doing so, you start using music notation software and you begin to realize you can do this. You can actually write music yourself. Okay, even though right now maybe you can't do it, if you just make these study sheets using this musescore.org, when you can read music, you can then write it. And so it's pretty easy. Then we move over to rhythm, and we'll do the same thing with rhythm. We'll start in 4/4, which again is called what? 4/4? Another word for 4/4?
Common time.
Common time, yep. It's so common that we basically just get that really well. And if that's all you get this semester, you're good to go. because a whole bunch of our music is in 4/4. And so we'll practice rhythm sheets on that, being able to sound it out. We'll use syllables to sound them out, musical syllables. But the key is that you get past the point where you don't need the syllables anymore. And there's certain kinds of rhythms we don't use syllables anymore. Like, so when you get up to like sextuplets and octuplets and things like this, at that point you're off the syllabus. Syllables, just like the acronyms for the pitches, you know, every good boy deserves so. That's a little bit like morphine. You don't want to be on it too long. You want to just get to the point where you can immediately identify the pitches and the rhythms, and you don't have to worry about sounding them out and things like this. But we start that way, okay? All right, we always work with a metronome. So even when you're identifying pitches, you want to get your brain to process the way reading music works. And I'll show you how to do that. So you got to have a metronome downloaded on your phone or on your computer. There are free metronomes. They're everywhere, free apps. So download one if you haven't done that already. Work with a metronome, because that's how you train your brain to recognize in real time which, FYI, is the way we read music. FYI is the way we process problems in music. Everything happens in time. And oh, by the way, we want you to have good time. And the way you have good time is practice. So when I'm practicing reading pitches and I'm practicing reading rhythms, I do everything with a metronome. And this gets my body and my mind and my eyes to all work in real time, okay, with a set beat. And if I stumble, let's say I'm reading pitches in treble clef and I'm going G, A, B, and then I like, F, G, A. What do? I was reading with a metronome, then I stumbled. What do? Ben?
Slow down. Restart.
Yeah, slow down. Well, restart, but slow it down. If I stumbled, the tempo was too fast. Okay, so I have to tell, dear adult, I know you want to get this really fast, and I know you just want to be good, because that's what adults want to do. I want to just be really good. I just want to play. Okay, but the problem is that's not the way discipline works. Discipline works is, in order for me to get good, I have to be bad, and I have to be bad at where I'm at. So I have to roll it back. I have to take the time to find that tempo I can get all the way through, do it at that tempo, and then roll it up. Now I'm practicing A, good practice habits, and B, good time. All right, does that make sense? Now, is there anything about the adult mind that is saying, oh, this sounds like fun, I can't wait to do this? Yeah, I'm guessing not. Okay, so there's the problem. You know, your level of motivation has to be, I want to train my brain and I want to learn how to practice, and I want to go ahead and be okay with being, you know, where I'm at. And I know that if I do that and I apply that practice habit to anything else over the course of my adult life, I will get better a lot quicker than the people around me. That's the best I got. All right. All right, so after we do the recognition of pitches, then we do the location of the pitches, then we do the same with bass clef, then we do the rhythm. Now we put the pitches and the rhythm together. We just slow everything down, and we try to keep our eyes focused on the music, and we'll start with the treble clef melodies. And for many of you, that's as far as you'll get. You'll do melodies with if you're in track 1, all I need is a melody for reading. And then basically I can say, okay, you can read music. If I see that the rhythm is accurate and I see that you're playing the pitches, I basically just need you to play a melody, okay? If you're in tracks 2 and 3, I need you to play a melody in treble clef and in bass clef, but they don't have to be together. And then if you're in 3, you should definitely work to being able to do melodies and bass, melody and bass lines at the same time, or be able to play a simple hymn or something like this, because this is the basic piano skills that is needed to go on into a university. Okay. All right, so those are the goals. You will get to the goals if you do the assignments according to the schedule. You'll have no problem being able to play a simple little melody in treble clef track 1, treble clef and bass clef track 2, and treble clef and bass clef preferably together, but still could be separate in track 3. You'll have no problem doing that in 3 weeks, because I will walk you through all the skill sets, and I'll show you how to practice them and things like this. If on the other hand you don't keep up with this, or the boringness of this, the lack of sexiness of this, okay, keeps you from doing it, then that means A, you didn't find a high enough motivation, or B, you didn't use that motivation to go ahead and propel you to do the actual work. And just so you understand, this is a no pain, no gain scenario here. if you put the pain in on this, in no time you'll be reading music. If you can work it into your regimen. I will say that it's actually therapeutic, because everything around our world is emotional, and it's like, this and that, whatever. When you get in that zone of reading pitches and rhythms with a metronome, you get into this, it's almost hypnotic. It's like the opposite of our lives, which are like, social media input and, political bickering and all this stuff coming in, all the pain and all that, whatever, it's coming in on, all these little sound bites and things like this. This is kind of the opposite of that. All right, so that's basically it. So here's where we start. We start with the treble clef and the bass clef, the notes that are on the staff. You'll notice that we have, this is the treble clef, or we sometimes call it the G clef. I don't know anybody that really calls it the G clef, but it's the treble clef. And then this is the bass clef, also called the F clef. All right. These are the notes basically that I need to have you be able to go ahead and recognize. This is the notes on the staff. These are the notes that basically, this is middle C. Middle C looks the same in bass clef as it does in treble clef. This is like an imaginary line in between the treble and bass clef called middle C. This is like literally the middle note on the piano, and we'll get to that when we do that. The grand staff is the treble clef and the bass clef together. Okay, so when we get to a grand staff, that's what you want to be able to do, is do pitches on the grand staff, which means you can do melody, you can do bass lines, and you can do harmony. That would be the goal of anybody who wants to be even, somewhat of a professional musician. After you get the notes on the staff, then you would want to work on what we call the ledger lines. And the ledger lines are extending the notes of the staff, because this is the F on the top line of the treble clef. Okay? So what about all these? All right, and the point is, I need to have lines to basically extend that. So we only have a 7-note vocabulary, and so it's going to be pretty easy for you to guys get this. I mean, this F is an F always. So once you recognize it as being an F and you come back the next day, it's still going to be an F. It's been an F for 1,200 years, so it ain't going anywhere. All right, so you just want to learn to be able to recognize these pitches. Again, it starts with motivation, but after motivation, it's just a matter of you setting aside 10 minutes, and you can use, there's musictheory.net is a place where you can go and identify the notes individually. I don't recommend you spend a lot of time on that, but initially, if you've never recognized or pitches or whatever, it's a great place to start. And then you want to make your own study sheet using musescore.org, and then set a metronome, and then be able to identify the pitches with a set beat. And that would be the ultimate goal. So you're actually reading the pitches, even though you may not be reading the rhythm yet. All right, so after we do the pitches on the staff and treble clef, do the pitches with the ledger lines above and below, and then integrate them together until you get to the point where, again, you can be fairly quick in your recognition of pitches, identification of the pitches. And you do the same thing in the bass clef. Okay, so this is the A on the top line of the bass clef. This is middle C. Then we just go up from there. There's the D, there's the E, there's the F, there's the G. You should at least go up to a G here. Okay, and you should go up to an E here. So my recommendation for treble clef is this E below the staff to this E above the staff. My recommendation for bass clef is this B below the bass clef, because that would be like a 5-string bass, to this G above. Okay, and that covers all sopranos, most violins, clarinets, stuff like this. I mean, you can play higher than that, but again, we're not talking theory 1. All right. All right, so identify notes on the treble clef, then on the bass clef, then the ledger lines above and below. Develop a study sheet using MuseScore. Find a manageable piece, and then work that into your regimen. Identify the notes and location, identify the rhythm of that piece, and then try to estimate the placement, and then find a slow tempo that you can go ahead and keep your eyes focused on the music and play it all the way through. We don't want you to memorize the music and play by memory, because then you're like not reading. So remember, it's not about playing the piece, it's about reading the piece. If you want to learn to read, practice reading. Okay, we're fine on you playing by ear. Believe me, that's really important. Play by ear, continue to do that. But if you're going to practice reading, practice reading. So you have both skills, okay? So what we can do is very often we'll read enough to get the notes in our ear, and then we'll play by ear. You're no longer reading. Keep your eyes focused on the notation and try to go ahead and be able to play through and trust your fingers to find the notes on the keyboard. That's actually reading. Okay. All right. Let's take a break and let's just chat. So, anybody got some thoughts? Oops. All right. So, thoughts, comments, questions, concerns.
I have a question. Where are we supposed to turn in the practice or study sheet?
So the study sheet is basically for you, but if you do it and you want to turn it in, then everything goes in the discussion boards at the end of the unit. So anything that you do over and above, like let's say as an example, if I'm in track 3 and I can already read treble and bass clef, I might just keep a log, like I'll do the basic assignments, just knock them out, which will probably take me like 30 minutes, okay, because I already can read. All right, so I'll do the assignments and then I'll just practice reading maybe 30 minutes a day, 3 or 4 times a week, and I'll just log that time. And then I'll post the log on the discussion board, Unit 3. Okay, so anything that you do over and above, or any assignments you change or you alter, or any work that you do, you post in the discussion boards at the end of the units. All right, if you do another sonograph, as an example, and you create another piece with another partner or something like this, and whatever, post that at the end of the unit that you did it in. So, you know, Unit 3 now is where we are, okay? Make sense? Yeah, and I want you to do that. I mean, I literally want you to use your own brain and your own style of learning. I'm going to give you as many tools as I can, but I'm not going to tell you learning to read music is like exciting. I mean, the process of learning to read music is exciting because it's nothing more than rote memory. It was like memorization of the times tables. But didn't that kind of pay off a little bit later on? Like the times tables, isn't that kind of like, have you ever tried to do your own taxes or like, oh, it hasn't paid off for you? Okay, Clayton's going. Okay, well, so I use it. I mean, back when I was like going out in the world, like every time I go to a grocery store, I use it. Like, oh, you know, the pizza is $4.99 and I want to buy 2 pizzas. Well, how much would that be? And I'm unconsciously immediately saying, well, round $4.99 up to 5 and then multiply it times 2. Oh, I can do that. I have the technology. $10. Woo! Okay, and I'm doing it automatically because it was rote. Okay. All right, so it's the same thing with this. Is you'll be glad you did it, but while you're doing it, it's just like, oh God, please make this end. And I can't do anything about that, all right? Because it's just a matter of doing the practice with a metronome and doing this rote memorization until you get to the point where you're on autopilot. It's the way we learn languages, okay? All right, but then, by the way, when you want to compose something and actually get it down, and I want to go ahead and write something and take it over to John and Ben and Pablo, and I say, okay, guys, let's play this tune, and I hand you my lead sheet, okay, we can count to 4 and like play it. And that's pretty cool. All right. Yeah, so I wish I knew, if I knew jokes now, I'd tell jokes, but I don't know any jokes. Anybody got anything, comments, questions?
So the practice sheet, what might that look like?
Yeah, so we'll cover that next week. Right now, you've got a bunch of assignments that are up there that are just going to be basic, kind of like identify the pitches and show me you can do it, and they'll self-grade and whatever. So this week, especially if you don't already know how to read music, just do the assignments this week. This basically walks you through familiarization of the clefs, of what the pitches are, of what ledger lines are, everything that I talked about today. It walks you through much more slowly, and then there's nice videos there to go over it and things like this as well. So I would say do that. If you're already past that point, then I will show you. And I'm going to click on MuseScore. Okay, there you go. All right, you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so this is MuseScore, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to MuseScore. I'm going to click off your faces, so if you're sticking your tongue out at me, I don't see it, so you can, okay. All right, so create a score. I'm going to title this A Lovely Note Practice. ugly emoji, frowny emoji. Okay, I'm going to do grand staff. Woohoo! I'm going to say done. All right, good. So here's what I do. I just basically go up here, and you can, this doesn't take long to learn. You click on this one. This is your note putter inner, and then this is the type of rhythm. Go ahead and assign rhythms and use practice accidentals, even if you don't know what they are. But otherwise, just start with quarter notes. So, okay, I'm going to click on the quarter note, and then I'm going to say, okay, let me practice doing notes on the staff. Okay, beautiful. Let me just do a bunch of notes on the staff. All right, and then let me put some sharps in. So let me go ahead and do that, and let's call that a sharp. There we go, cool. And let's do another sharp, cool. Let's do something up here. Whoops, there we go. And so I'll just do a bunch that are on the staff, okay? Like that. Everybody with me? Now, if you want to hear this, oh, this is lovely. You won't believe this. This is just so beautiful. Whoops. What did I just do? Okay. All right, so let's play it. Oops. Stop. That was great. That is the bum diggity piece. All right. So that's how I practice it. Now, when I practice the actual thing, I'm going to start my metronome pretty slow. I would suggest you go down as low as in the 50s, what we call larghetto or largo, okay, which is really slow. This is 68. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and do this together. 1, 2, ready, go. E, G, D, B, C sharp, G, F sharp, A. Okay. All right, so how many of you got that? All right, good. So that's what I do. And I literally would take that out and do it maybe 10 minutes a day, 3, 4, or 5 times a week preferably, because the brain just loves repetition. At the end of like 3 or 4 times, I'll have it. Okay. At the end of 5 or 6 times, I'll have it pretty good. At the end of a couple of weeks, if I just continue to do this, like 5 minutes a day, 3 or 4 times a week, it'll go into long-term memory. All right. And then I moved the pace up. So that was pretty slow. Most music doesn't happen at 68 beats. If I looked at your playlist, you probably don't have any music that happens at that. All right, so let's move it up. And eventually I want to get up a little bit faster. So let's try it here. 2, ready, go. E, G, D, B, C sharp, G, F sharp, A. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, you get the idea. Okay. All right, then I would build ledger lines. Okay, so now we go up here, and I'm going to build ledger lines, cool ledger lines, and I'm going to just, yeah, that's a ledger line there. You got to give me a little ledger line here. Let's do down here. I'm having so much fun. Put a flat on that one just for the heck of it, and then maybe a C sharp. And there we go. Okay, good. Let's do this. Are you ready? First of all, this is what it would sound like. Yeah, that's gonna win me an Emmy. All right, good. Grammy. All right, here we go. Let's do it. Nice and slow. 1, 2, ready, go. A, B, C, G, E, A, B flat, C sharp. All right, now, here's where you want to bring your child into the room, because your adult probably says, if you don't read treble clef or you don't read music, it's like, I don't read this. But here's what your child would have done. Your child doesn't know how to read this either, but they heard the people around them go A, B, C, G, E. Then they're going to get here and they're going to say, oh, that one looks the same as that. A, B, C. Okay. And that's what your child is going to do. Your child is going to be like, oh, we just copy. We don't care. But your adult is like going back and like, well, I don't know this one. And bad me, I didn't get it. And while you're doing this, your potential to be able to get the answer is like going right by you. Like, this is a B. What do you think this is? It's a B flat, okay? Maybe you don't know that, but we'll get to that. But it's still a B. It's been a B for 1,200 years. And if it was a B 3 seconds earlier, it's going to still be a B. All right? And so again, just liberate yourself to go ahead and just like do this, but do this with the energy of your child. You'll have this in no time. I mean, literally no time. All right, then you mix them up, do the ledger lines below, mix them up, and then get to the point where you can do it slowly all the way through, and then go on to your bass clef, and then go back to your treble clef and reinforce your treble clef so that you don't go too long without doing this. And once you've done it, you'll have them forever. Okay, now we go and apply it preferably to a piece you want to play. Those of you guys that struggle with discipline, make sure you find a piece of music that is of an artist or of a style that you would want to learn, because it'll motivate you more to practice reading. Okay, the only thing is because you know the song, you got to block out the fact that you know it and not just play it, but practice this discipline of reading with a metronome. Okay, and so just remember that we're not practicing playing. If we wanted to do that, we wouldn't even bother to do this, because I could just go ahead and play a piece for you and you guys would pick it up by ear, and after a while you'd get it. Okay, and that is, by the way, an important technique for musicians. But if you want to learn to read music, practice reading, and that's this ugly stuff we're doing here. Okay, I'm losing people. People are falling asleep. I got no way to give you coffee across the internet. So anybody have any comments or questions or concerns or?
So that is MuseScore, correct?
That's MuseScore, musescore.org. And there may be you can pay for this, but opt for the no, I don't want to pay for it. Okay, because you can do plenty with the free platform. All right. All right. They always find ways of trying to get money out of people, so just don't do that one. All right. Anybody else? So any thoughts about music? Any questions about just like music or what we talked about at the beginning of class, or thoughts about life, or how to make this be more interesting? Anybody like can think of some way to make this gamified in some way? Because I can't. Any other thoughts?
I feel like something I found that may motivate me is I'm gonna like I listen to music when I drive and everything. I'm gonna try to pick out like one song that I like the melody of, and then have that like at the end of my practicing when I practice.
Yeah,
like,
good.
Doing notes is working on
Good,
a melody or something.
Good. So great idea, Ben. So that's an example. Now we call that transcription. This is where we're actually filling in the sonograph, which is actually transcription or composition. And, you know, transcription if it's somebody else's piece, composition if it's mine. Okay. So whether you come up with the melody or you find a piece that you're really interested in, sing it, then try to go ahead and play it on the keyboard, and now put it into MuseScore to the best of your abilities. Okay, and those of you guys who have some rhythm experience, then add the rhythm to it to the best of your abilities as well. And then see if you can go ahead and when you hit the play button, see if it sounds like the piece that you were listening to. Okay, yeah, great example. So that's how musicians learn to take something that's boring and make it into something that's not quite as boring, is after I do the basic recognition stuff and I do this basic thing, then I try to find something to go ahead and work it on into my actual life. And so for me, as an example, I might come over here and I might come up with a melody. Ba da 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 da. That's my melody. Woo-hoo. Okay, so I come and find the pitch, okay, and then I come over here to my lovely MuseScore, and I go, da. Oops. Bloody ties. Okay, I'm working on this. So this is not entirely intuitive, just FYI. There we go. Oh, I can't get it. All right, so now we play it and see if this sounds like what I played. Here we go. 1, 2. And the only reason is because I couldn't get the tie on that F. All right, so boom, now I have it forever. That beautiful, wonderful melody I came up with now lives in infamy. Everyone in the world can play my melody. All right, lovely, no practice. I don't know why I say that. All right, yeah, Ben, great idea. So yeah, so you guys get the idea? It's like I just created a piece, and now later on I put a bass line with it, and then I put some chords in there, and then I put I love music theory, yes. Woo. I put some lyrics to it. It's like it's Grammy ready. Yep. At least I will be able to play it at the end of this unit. Yeah, right. Okay, good. All right, good. Any other comments, thoughts? The only other thing I'd say is, so over 50% of you didn't work with someone on the pieces. Those of you that did masterful jobs, and just the working with someone means you learned twice. Once you learn from doing the piece, the sonograph, which is like the theory part, and the other is you learn from each other by sharing information and ideas. I go back to John and Aurora's piece as an example. That was a masterful collaboration. Okay, and it was masterful because they were exchanging information about each other's lives and backgrounds and whatever. So this is an example of you maybe trying to do this. Like, let's go ahead and set up a Zoom, or let's set up a little conference, and let's go ahead and drill pitches together. And you'd be amazed at just how much more enjoyable something that's really boring is when you do it with somebody else, because misery loves company. So I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It's not like this is like, again, it's not like this is enjoyable, but it is something that if you want to get good at, it really helps to work with someone. All right, I'm done. Class is 10:25, so technically we've reached the end of our limit here. So does anybody have any last thoughts? All right, so if you have any questions or concerns you want to ask individually, please feel free to stay on. I'll be here. I'm going to stay on until nobody is around. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. Those of you that are not caught up and didn't finish Unit 2, expect to hear from me this week in an email, kind of a generic email. It's like, what's up? You got to get going on this, because just so you know, if you get behind like a unit or two or whatever, it's harder for me to honor you just because there's nothing there to honor. It's like there's nothing there. I can't grade anything. Give me something. So if there's any assignments that are missing, just go back and do them. And again, it's not about whether they're right. It's just that they're done, and you get used to that being the standard. And then we just keep increasing the quality of the standard as we go. But it starts with being done. Just do the work. And again, I'll honor you for doing it. Okay.